Hello and welcome back to the Bentley Continental GT. Now incidentally, despite the fact that I've had this car for a couple of weeks now, this is the first time that I have embarked on any form of prolonged journey. Clue is in the name after all, it is a Grand Tourer, and today I've driven all the way down to Goodwood for an event which takes place once a year, which is a media-driven event. It's a time when Goodwood invite down all of the manufacturers who wish to display their latest cars so that the likes of myself and other people from the automotive sphere get the opportunity to check them out, talk with the industry, do a bit of networking, catching up, and importantly, drive some of the cars. However, despite the fact that this is the first time that I have embarked on somewhat of a prolonged journey, I have in fact lived with this car for around about 1,000 miles now. So I thought it would be a good time to give you guys a brief overview of what it's been like for the first 1,000 miles living with a Bentley Continental GT. Well, obviously, from the outset, it's been bloody terrific. It's absolutely wonderful. I do think 1,000 miles is enough to get to grips with a car, learn its character traits, its annoyances, its pros and its cons. On that note, I'm also carrying plenty of gear around as well. Now I did actually visit the in-laws with my wife and my newborn baby boy. Now Lucinda, my wife, likes to sit in the back with my child because he's still 8 weeks old and he still doesn't quite know what's going on, so we like to provide him with as much comfort as we can as we're driving. However, while there's space in the back for baby boy, there's not a great deal of space in the back for the wife, who was kind of scrunched up in a bit of an uncomfortable ball. So, and I've always maintained this, in terms of two people enjoying this car, fantastic. In fact, without exception, in my personal opinion, the interior of the new Bentley Continental GT, particularly with the Mulliner specification optioned, is just class leading. It's such a different ballgame compared to anything else in this segment. But basically, everyone else needs to pull their finger out because this place is resplendent. Having said that, from the practicality side of things, as two of you going on a Grand Tour or just using this daily, fantastic, and it would be okay for the kid once he's a little bit more grown up and he can use a forward-facing seat. Right now there's legislation where under a certain age the baby seat has to be facing backwards, and so as a result the rear of the chair sticks out so far that if there is a passenger in the passenger seats, there's no room for the passenger. I mean, it's like legs off job. So not great for young families, but I reckon it would work much better as soon as the child can sit facing forwards. Anyway, that might not apply to everyone, but it's just my personal circumstances right now. That being said, I'm spending the majority of the time in this car on my own. What this thing does incredibly well is bend physics. The performance is absurd. The thing that I think I'm the most impressed with is the traction and acceleration from standstill. That's not even using launch control. I just mean mashing your foot on the throttle. The way this thing squats, it just grabs a fistful of tarmac and shoots you down the road. It's unbelievable. For something that weighs around about 2.4 tons. And then, once you do show it a corner, the anti-roll system on the new Continental GT is quite astounding. Now, the car itself has 900 Newton meters of torque. Bentley have engineered a 48-volt anti-roll system, which develops more torque than the engine. I think it's around about 1,300 Newton meters of torque that is required to keep this thing running flat. But it does an insanely good job. You send this into a corner at a swift pace, and the way that it composes itself, it's so much more agile than the previous generation car. It's so much more luxurious. But there is one little detail which is frustrating me just a little bit, and that is the lane change assist warning, where there's basically lights which are embedded in the wing mirrors. It checked your blind spot for you. So if there is anybody in your blind spot, it flags up. It basically flashes at you in your face here. Okay at times, but I have found that it is a little bit oversensitive in that there's been phantom cars that simply aren't there and it flashes at me. So I have found myself actually driving smoother with it off. But I think my favourite feature on this car so far, of all of its tech, has to be the drive select switch. Of all of the cars that I have had the honour and privilege of driving, sometimes you'll put a car into sport mode or into comfort mode, and you're aware something's happened, but it's vaguely there. This car is the most dramatic display of vehicle recalibration at the flick of a button that I think I've ever found. The first example of this was actually when I drove the Bentayga, and it's a very similar system on this. But the difference between sport and comfort on this is almost like two different cars. From every aspect, from the sound, from the gear shifts, from the throttle response, and the comfort and damping and the agility, everything changes. So in sport, this car becomes taut. It gets on its toes. Look, you can hear it straight away. The sound and the bassy tone of the exhaust is unlocked. There are some engineered pops and cracks and baubles on the overrun, but you kind of don't mind that because it is, you know, a very well insulated Grand Tourer. But the throttle response and the pickup, and actually what I do love is that you can hear the massive suction and whoosh from the turbos. It's a really guttural feel that you don't get in other settings of the car. You might be able to pick up on right now that I'm kind of bouncing around in my chair a little bit, because in sport mode, the whole car becomes quite stiff. But the result is, you can thread this thing down a British B-road like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, I'm now approaching the gates of Goodwood Motor Circuit. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so seamless transition from road to track. Conveniently find myself on the Goodwood circuit. I haven't driven this track for quite some time, but I remember it being fast, and I remember that on the occasion the odd Spitfire would fly over your head. It's just crazy what this thing is like for the size of what it does. So here we go. Porsche developed world's first 8-speed twin clutch box, mated to a W12. No less. The magic there is how much torque this thing has to deal with. Conventionally, twin clutch boxes have never been that great at dealing with torque, but things have evolved somewhat, and now we've got them in mass-produced cars like this, which is pretty crazy. Here we are on track. I mean, I'm casually doing, that was like 105 miles an hour down here in your Grand Tourer, carrying your suit and your kid in the back, if you wish, sir. It's a stunning thing. Working your way down this twin clutch box is gorgeous. You really wouldn't think that if you look at this car, its platform does not suggest that it would do what we're doing now. Not that we're driving 10/10s, but you know, this is a Grand Tourer, for God's sake. It's ridiculous. And actually, despite this thing being four-wheel drive as well, the front end compared to the previous generation is sensational. I mean, that gearbox, man, it's so sweet. Sure if the camera's picking up on this, but you can hear those turbos whistling as well. This thing is sucking in most of the environment around it. But as a result, we're developing 630 horsepower and actually 900 Newton meters of torque. Brings me swiftly onto this anti-roll system, which develops more torque than the engine itself in order to keep it flat. It's a bonkers vehicle. The stats that surround this thing, everything from the engine to the stitching. I mean, there's almost 3 kilometers of stitching in this car. It's kind of a juxtaposition of its own stats. Because on the one hand, it's like, look how luxurious we are. and then on the other hand, I'm on a track throwing this thing around like it really shouldn't. It's bonkers. And so there you have it. I really wasn't planning on, at the beginning of this video, I had no idea that I would have the opportunity to take a Bentley Continental on track. Let's face it, it's not exactly at home. However, it was an example of just how mind-bending that thing is. For its platform, for its weight, for its size, it's incredible. You know, it's not a track car, but that's not the point. It was just to highlight the agility and just like the all-round composure of that package. Yeah, truly fascinating car. Like I said, first 1,000 miles. Comments below what more you want to see from that car in terms of content, road trips, journeys, adventures. Let me know in the comments below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ciao.